Okay. Well, thank you, Vita, and wow, I hope I live up to that.
Okay, here you go.
I have one on here. Is this working?
It's not for them. You need both.
Oh, I need both. Okay. This is dual talking. I'm going to, first of all, I'm very official. I stole my husband's pointer so I can point things out. I'm going to take you through the process of weaving. I don't know how many, I know there's some weavers here, so you can be bored. But for the rest of you, I know that I love to know, so how did you do that? Where did it begin? How did you start, or whatever? I've been weaving now for, I know it from the age of my daughter, 43 years. I ordered my first Macomber, M-A-C-O-M-B-E-R, from Maine. It took a year to come. It's shorter to have a baby than to have a loom. And we fit it into the house, and it has been in my life, weaving has been in my life, foreground, background, for years. And Vita mentioned I have a handicapped son, so the advocacy winds me up, and this is my meditation. So this is the back of my loom, and we can proceed on, and I will also show you some weavings and talk about specifics, and I'll answer any questions if anyone has any. Okay, so this is the beginning of the process. This is a warping board, and this particular warping board, you put a little cross up here to keep everything straight, and you go around and around and around and around and around with each thread that you need in your warp. So if you have 100 threads, you go around 100 times. And this particular one will do 20 yards. So the next slide. And this is how it looks when it has the yarn on it before I take it to the next step. So we can go to the next step. And then in order to be able to deal with this massive amount of yarn, you need to chain it. You put your hand through and pull it through and keep going so that it's workable. So that's the chain that's now going to go. And you can see the cross up here. If I don't have that cross, this thing is just going to be one mishmash of threads. So you have to keep that cross. And as you go along, you tie it. And you can see it where I tie it tightly so it doesn't get all tangled up. Next. Then I put it on the back of the loom. There's what's called a rattle, which is actually a piece of wood that the loom came in that I put in nails. But a rattle just separates it. So there's a nail every ½ inch. And when I wind it on here, and this corrugated paper on here, I spread it out using rubber bands so that they don't pop up. And through the cross, I've found this system years ago, and I've copied it to my second loom, which I'll talk about, where these long dowels are used to keep that cross. So the cross is there, which keeps them lined up, and they don't come in on each other. That it's a dovetailing thing. So there are the threads, and I wind up all of the 20 yards, and then we go to the next one. And this is how it goes. Each of those threads then has to go through one of the heddles. Looms have harnesses, and a harness pulls up the threads, and the more harnesses you have, the more complex the weave. So you can do a plain weave on 2 harnesses, up and over and under and over. Or you can have, one loom of mine has 8 and the other has 10 harnesses. The more harnesses you have, the more complex the weave. So it's a little bit like playing the piano. If you do it with 2 fingers, you get, it's limited of what you can do. But if you're using all 10 fingers and the sharps and the flats, you can really see a lot of this. And before I go through this, I wanted to mention that the whole idea of the art history major and the math background that was so enticing is that the loom is one of the first computers. It's really, fabric has been here for a long, long time. A loom, basically, you just have to keep the warp tight and under pressure. So the people who are out there in the wild just wrap it around their waist in a tree, and it's a very mild under-over thing that they do. There are also tapestry looms, but that's basically what a loom has to do. The modern ones keep it quite taut. And if you're getting into weaving, the bigger the loom, the heavier it is, the better the selvage is. It's kind of like driving a Volkswagen Little Bug versus a heavy-duty Continental, Lincoln Continental or something. It's you get the heavier the loom. It's not just that the people who were doing it on these small homemade looms can't keep a selvage. It's just hard to keep a selvage when you have a really rickety loom. So after it goes through these heddles, and each one, in this particular design, and I'll show you, these become placemats, which I brought. I have it going through 4 different heddles. So the 4th one, the 3rd one, the 2nd one, the 1st, then the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. And then I pull it through, and it goes through what's called the reed. And the reed comes in various sizes. And that both beats the yarn when it's all tied up, and it spaces it. So if I wanted to have 6 threads per inch, I'd either skip threads, or I'd have it spread out so that have it fit into the reed. But the looms are versatile in that you can exchange a different reed for it. Okay, and next. Okay, so now, I have everything threaded through, and then I tie it on in the front on what's called an apron, and I tie it tight. And this is what's going to do me in when I get old. These are called the treadles, and you have to tie up each of those harnesses to these treadles. So you've got to get down on your hands and knees. I use a kickboard or something you'd go gardening on, to get down there and hook them all up. But that's the part that you've got to hire the little young kid who lives next door when you get older. But you can tie 2 harnesses to 1 or 3 harnesses to 1, so that once it's tied up, you can go quite quickly. If you didn't have that, you'd have to do one pedal for each thing, which you can do. So then you'd press 1 and 3 together and 2 and 4 together. But it's easier if you can put 2 and 4 on one pedal and another one with 1 and 3 on there, and then be able to just alternate. Wow. Next. So now you get to see what came through. It's wound around, and those particular placemats, I made sure I finished them in time for this.
Should I hold them up?
Yeah. And they're reversible. One side has like a stripe in it. You can see you just flip them over and you see it. And the front and the back. And there it is being woven on the loom.
Yeah, is it okay to pass them on?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things I want to mention that I do when I make my weavings is that I'm very practical. Everything has been machine washed and dried when it comes to placemats or table runners or rugs. So I've done all the shrinking, which is immense, because there's like 2 inches in each direction on every placemat. And these particular placemats, when you look at them, are quite heavy. I've come up with my own, I kind of got famous on this. It's mop yarn. If you look at the heavy green, it is literally mop yarn. I have a company in Humboldt, Tennessee that sends me huge quantities of these. I order every 2 or 3 years. They come on a flat, and my husband and I have to put them up in the attic, and it's a big deal. And you get charged extra because we live in a townhouse cluster instead of a business. But anyway, that's what I do. It only comes in some colors, like the green, the yellow, white, and I brought some others that I'll show you, blue, and a pink that I have on now. And so from that, using different colors, I blend it in different ways. I see a question back there. Okay.
You're not dying.
I'm not at this point. I used to, and everything, nothing was sacred. My daughter had all sorts of colored underwear and everything. I mean, it was just like, there was a little dye left, and you just went to town. So everything was whatever color you were dyeing. So next. So here I'm showing you some blue mats on the, and the color isn't that true. I really needed to get Alan over there. But what I wanted to point out was the one on top of it, which has been finished and shrunken. So you can see the difference in the width, and that's only the width, not the length. And that makes a huge difference. Once people buy these, they come back because they last forever. And one of the things when I do the placemats is frequently it shows people will say, oh, I'm going to a wedding and my niece, daughter, whatever, has these dishes. And we look them up on the iPhone. And I say, these placemats, those placemats, what do you want? We hold it up there, and it's really special to get the placemats because they have no price attached to them, and they were made just for the bride or for yourself. Yeah. So, next. Okay, so now I wanted to show you what a weaver starts with. In a book, this is a 6-thread herringbone. And what it is this is like what you would get. This is like the music score for this particular woven item. And you'll see that they have 4, 3, 2, 1. It's on 4 harnesses. The first thread goes in here, second and 3, the second and third and 2, 1, 4, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. That's 12 threads. And then they're telling you it repeats. And then they end it with this last one, but it's basically the same thing. So that is the threading. And then you would do that as long and as wide as you want to get this pattern, number 1. So then over here, this is the tie-up. This means the treadles that you put your feet on the bottom, you have to put 3 and 4 together on one treadle, on one thing that you step on. 2 and 3, 1 and 2, 1 and 4, 2 and 4, 1 and 3. So you got it all set up to do this design. And then it shows you, okay, let's weave it. So you take your yarn, and this is showing a contrast. So the warp is, let's say, white or black, and the weft, which is the other way, is the other color. So you go 4, 3, 2, 1, and you repeat. So it tells you all of this. This is like the Vogue patterns or whatever. Now, if you want this pattern, this is how you weave it and repeat. So to get this one, you use this treadling, is what it's called. And to do this one, you use this one. That's a simple 4-harness design. Next. Okay, now we're into bigger ones. So this is just an extension. By the way, I got into 8-harness designs, and weavers love to do complex designs. And I found this book when my husband and I were in Oxford, England. He was at a conference, and I was roaming around, and I go into Oxford, England to find a book that comes from Colorado that's on 8 harnesses. So, but that's how you find things. So this one is using 8 harnesses, and it tells you where to put all the threads. And then this is a different book, and I just took a wavy picture of it. This shows you what the tie-up is, and this shows you, for $1.95, I believe it is, this one, that's how you weave it. If you want to do this one, you do this. If you want to do this one, you do that, and then all the way down. And with these, you have to change, you have to get under the loom and change the tie-up to your treadles. But you got 20 yards wound on, or at least I do, because I get very lazy. The warping is horrible. And if you're going to do it, it's like making chili. You might as well make enough for the freezer. So, so I make a long warp, do the commission pieces first, or what I was planning to do, and then in my mind it's paid for. So then I have fun, and I combine things. And I'll show you some of the patterns over here of how I combine things and what I do. And in fact, when I get commissions, I think everybody who's into crafts has some little scheme or whatever of how they free up what they're doing. For me, if you asked me to make a vest, and like this one has a black warp, and you gave me the colors, I'd make 2 or 3 of them so that you could pick what you want, so I'm not stifled trying to figure out what you have in mind about what you think that I have in mind about what you have in mind. And the same thing goes with wall hanging. So I will make several, and then I don't think about it, because it'll just go into inventory and it'll get sold at the next craft fair, or if not that one, the one afterwards. But it's just a little freeing thing I do, so I don't get nervous about making exactly what the person has in mind. And if it's a couple, then you're dealing with 2 people. And if it's a committee, don't take it. Do not take it. Okay, next. All right, so this is the studio, and if you haven't seen it, Sonia was there. Come on over. So that's my wall of yarns, and that's the warping board, my sewing machine. And this is closed up so that they both fit in. This is my 40-inch Macomber. That's 8 harnesses, and you see the treadles down here, and it's all wound up in the back. And it was about 7 years ago I got this opportunity of, all of you know, or many of you know, Casey Siebert, and she went through craft after craft after craft, from basketry to weaving to jewelry to you name it. And then she decided she wanted to travel, and she called me up and said, "Do you want my loom?" And I went, "I want your loom?" And I'm sitting there with, wow, this is a bigger loom than mine, and it's the same make, but it's 48 inches wide, and it's got more harnesses. And I went, oh my goodness, so what am I going to do? Am I going to sell the other one? And then I went, no, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to take the bench and shove it from one to the other, and I'm going to get past sequential, which this is an amazing, I've had a few ahas, and I'll tell you another one which I want to thank a crafter here for, but this aha was, I got past sequential. It's like being able to read 2 books at once. You know, the one that's a textbook and the one that's a novel. So I can do placemats and then wall hangings. And I can, otherwise, I can't do what you want me to do unless I cut it off or I finish it. Yeah. So there you go. I have 2 of them now, and I don't know what I can't retire. I don't know what. It's just a very big deal. I have a huge stash. It's much more than this. You come over and I'll show you. I can outstash anybody.
Who doesn't have a big stash?
Well, I'm out there in the competition land. So those are my yarns again.
Beautiful
Yeah, and it's fun to look at them. And yarns are like paints.
Yes.
You know, you just sit there and you look at them, and if they're sitting there, that's the physics part. It's like potential. You're waiting.
How big's your room?
It's not that big. It's just, Sonia, how big is it? It's a basement room.
With your shelves, I would say 12 by 12 tops.
Yeah. So, but the yarns are potential. It's like fabric that you haven't sewed up into something. But this doesn't even have a pattern on it, so it's not like it went out of style. It's just yarn. So you have to be very careful when you're using yarn that you don't use cotton and wool. I mean, you have to mix it so that it comes out all right. So you use cotton and wool, but you have to vary it so that it's balanced. Otherwise, one part will shrink and the other won't. But you have to be careful when you combine things. So in the bathroom down there, I don't know, Sonia, whether you got into it. Once you get in and close the door, I call it my cotton bathroom. I have shelves and shelves of just cotton yarn, which I can use for placemats because they can be washed, machine washed and dried, where you can't do that with wool. Everything I do wash. But then I hand wash it and then dry it, and then, whoops, that's making noise. But I don't put it in the machine.
Why would you hand wash something that's like a wool piece?
Because the fiber comes alive. It's called fulling on many things. In fact, if you have a wool woven thing or many garments, the manufacturer covers themselves by saying dry clean it. Many things that you own, like silk, you can hand wash. And if you have any, this is just an interesting little tidbit, mattress pads, never, ever, ever throw them out. They make the best thing for drying anything on. You just put them on your living room floor and put your whatever and dry your stuff on it. And then if it gets too wet.
Where do you lock up the cats?
The cat? I don't have one.
Or the dogs?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh, no, it just goes after all of my yard.
Do you go backwards?
That's very interesting, and I'll come to that. So let's go on, and I'll make sure that. Oh, well, maybe I'll go back. I'll come to it now. Okay, so even if you can't go back, you're going forward. These are just wall hangings. So I come to the end of a weaving. Let's say I've done, for instance, I'm making all these placemats. After a certain amount, I end it, and what I do is I put a rod, a stick, a dowel, I weave it in, and I use Elmer's glue, white school glue. It dries, I cut it, but don't ever sew through the glue. This is how you really botch up your sewing machine. But that will keep it so that you can then just tie it on again without having to retie it and redo anything with it. But that's how I end it. Or you can put knots, or like some of the wall hangings have knots. I'll show you those. So I guess we can move on to the. So these are some wall hangings that were at a show. It's a little blurry, but I think I brought one of them. Yeah, I brought this first one over here. And next. More. This is a color gamp. A color gamp is basically a rainbow. It starts at one end of the spectrum and goes through the whole spectrum, and then what you get to see, it becomes, green and yellow is different than yellow and green. And you get to see the whole variety. So weaving is texture, pattern, and color. And it is amazing how much variety you can get, and how it can just go on and on and on.
I wonder if we turn these lights off, because the color is so vibrant here.
Okay.
Are we able to turn that light off? And the color is just fantastic. It's too bad it doesn't.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And this is over a wall in my house that it's going to convey with the house, because the ladder has to be too steep to move it. So.
That is gorgeous. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and those are floats. These are floats. So this is solid weave, and then this is a float, and this is a float. So it alternates. A float is where yarn just goes over the other solid piece, and it just floats out there. Okay, next.
So like, are you talking about a float, like you've got your warp, you're showing on top of?
The warp is solid, and then the weft in some places just moves over, just carries over. I think I have one I can show you that's like that. That's an op art piece, and I usually have that one in my booth. I bring it every year. Kind of brings people in. Okay, next. That's a vest, like I'm wearing, and keep going. Scarf. Those are the placemats. That's my booth, and that's the end of that. But I will show you some of these weavings and answer any questions. There are a lot of things that one learns about weaving. For instance, if you sew, you know how they always tell you to cut on the straight of the goods? Because the warp is the strong stuff. You can put anything through a weft. You could put cellophane, you could put metal, you could put anything. But the warp has got to be straight and stern and tight. And that's why that is the straight of the goods when you're you know, each craft teaches you about other crafts.
Yeah.
But that's where that one comes from.
Want me to hold something up?
Yeah.
Question.
A question, I'm thinking that this lady's question over here about how you end a piece wasn't like how you divide them on the loop.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna stop working on one and then go to the next one. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was thinking what her question was when you're all finished and you're ready to finish them, you've got your selvage edge, and then you have your edge that's all left, you know, because you've woven your piece, you've got your warp ends, you've cut it all apart, and now you want to make them into the actual placemats. You've taken them all.
Oh, okay.
All
right.
So
So
how do you finish each individual one?
okay. So the
Is that
all right. Well, the placemats are easy. I mean, now that I've done it for thousands of years, the placemats I have 20 yards on there. I weave 10 yards. And I count. I have counters. I put a pin in every certain number of inches, and I have a little clicker. When I get to the end of 10 yards, because once it's woven, that's the amount that can be handled on the back of the beam. I put the rod in, and I glue it, and I take it off. I cut it when it's dry. I then go over to the sewing machine, and I do not go through the glue, but in an inch I will then sew a straight line. I will then cut along each end. So this is my placemats are actually washed and dried twice. I have huge water bills. So so I start at the front and I start at the back, and then the 10 yards go in my washer. They're shrunken and they go in the dryer on hot. Then I got this long thing, and then I sit down and I measure off 16.5 inches, leaving, and I'll put a pin there, and then a pin, leaving a certain amount of space for fringe, and then on the other side I'll put a pin, and then I will sew along there, cut again, and then I will have my placemats. If I have a pattern, instead of something, if you look at these placemats, they're kind of regular. I have a pattern, but it's not like the wall hanging, where it's 3 of these, 2 of those, 3 of those, 4 of those. Because where it is, and I found out the hard way, where it is on the beam, it has different amount of tension. So you could end up with a placemat that's 16 inches, and another one that's 15, and another one that's 17. I mean, maybe in your house it's fine, but you don't want to sell it. So, that's what I do with that. The same thing I do when I do pillows, where I will stop weaving one and then put other colors in there. And then I will, when I take it off the loom, I stitch it, cut it, wash it, and then assemble it as a pillow. Yeah.
What do you use to cut?
Scissors. Plain old, I mean, a good one, fabric scissors. Yeah. So, show and tell. Oh.
Does anyone ever give you a design that they're interested in getting you to try to make?
Or they're more apt to give me something they want to match. You know, these are my dishes, this is my room, my colors are this, what do you think? And then we work it out together. So, I will show you, yeah. Okay, so let's see, which is the, yeah, this is one of the wall hangings that you saw in there. Wait, that goes down. And it's done on 8 harnesses. It is a color gamp. And the nice thing about wall hangings, you don't have to frame it. Actually, if they're wool, they're fireproof. Not totally, your house will still burn down, but maybe the wall hanging will last. But, but they're a soft part of a house. So I do a lot of wall hangings, and they're most aptly to go in either living rooms, dining rooms, or lawyers' offices at the front desk, or places like that. And then this is another one.
That was gorgeous.
And you see these? These are floats. Those are floats. They go over. And one thing I didn't mention, because I didn't want to get too complex, so if it goes over your head, just let it go. But in between floats, you have to have what's called tabby. Tabby is just under, over, under, over, under, over. So it really just locks in the floats. So you do a float, and then you do a lock-in stitch, and then you do a float, and then a lock-in stitch. Some of the designs I do are very traditional, but then I'll blow them up. I'll add in metallic. I'll add in fabric that you don't normally find in the older traditional weavings. So those are two. And now I want to get to these pillows. So these are off the same warp. This is a pearl cotton warp. And what I'm showing you is the variety you can get. But by doing this, you know, if this color is your color scheme, you have two on each end of the couch that are similar but different. And it's nice rather than having a matching set all the time. And sometimes, not these per se. Yeah, this one. I'll do the other side differently. And what I do is I have a polyester fiber filled pillow inside. I don't like zippers. I think they're ugly. You don't have it on your upholstery. So I sew it up, and should you have a cat that throws up or need to open these up, you open it up, you hand wash it, you put it back in, and then just use sewing thread. And that's the pillow. So these are some of the pillows. This one was made with the same fiber that was used in the placemat. And I thought it was fun, so that was that one. And that's a 12 by 16. They're great for lots of uses. This one I also have one set of placemats left, and I combined it where if you do the pattern just right, you can reverse it on these simple weaves by having a thick and a thin and doing alternate colors, and it comes up two different colors. So the placemats, I guess these are just more placemats. This blue one was this is a table runner. And if you'll notice when this one comes around, it is reversible. So you get a slightly different color, knowing whether the navy or the pale blue is on top. And then the placemats, and you could just come up and look at them here. They're white with blue. I do white with any color. I do all white. I have a new one which is white with silver, which is lovely because it's nice for the holidays and it picks up candlelight. And then the blue again. And then the pillows over there are two of them, the white and then the gray. Let's see. These are off the same warp, these two. So it shows you the variety you can get. And so I do the one, and then I play, and then there are 6 more of them like this, but different, that I have fun with. And this is part of a color gamp, only part of it. So a small little pillow. And then this one is, these last couple of pillows are the 8 harness ones. So they're much more complex than like that one that's going on over there. That's just 4 harnesses. So you get these patterns that almost look like a bargello or close to a quilting design. And that one has space-dyed yarn in it. I mean, I'll pick up the remnants of you know, what knitters have given away. And, right? And, oh, the other little tidbit I wanted to share with you, and I owe Laura Hummels, she probably doesn't remember, she said this to me. Laura, you here? Okay, this is a public thank you. Laura said to me when we were across from each other at the Reston show, I don't know, a decade ago, I said to her, you know, I have a problem. I either weave or I read, and I can't do both. And she says, well, listen to them on tapes. And it was like, duh. So I now listen to books on tape, and I'm very happy. So I just go downstairs, and as I said, you know, Jason winds me up really royally, and this unwinds me. And I don't see that I'll be giving it up shortly unless my knees go. So if anybody has any more questions, I don't want to take the whole night here.
Tell us about your vest.
Oh, I've made this design, which seems to go over pretty well, and I make like 2 sizes, and people try it on. If it works for them, it works. And you can see the back has a V in it. I have a few of them that are so old that it's almost embarrassing, like 20 years old or so. They last forever. You can wear them with silk, you can wear them with jeans, and they pack well. So,
is that made with wool, or is that
some I make with wool. This one is made with wool and chenille, and then I have some that are made with all cotton. And if you want to see the studio and we could figure out a time, you can come over and see it. But you kind of got to see it here, but if anybody wants to tour, you're welcome to. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right.